Welcome and thanks for joining us. I'm Cheryl McKenzie. By now, many of you know how the powerful opioid is taking effect on people's lives. It's actually taking people's lives. We're putting in focus the fentanyl crisis. It's a relentless addiction that people across Canada are going to be pulled into, and we want you to join our conversation. You can call us now. Our phone lines are open at 1-877-647-2786. You can also tweet us at APTN InFocus. Use the hashtag fentanyl InFocus or email infocus@aptn.ca. Before I introduce you to our guests, let's set the scene. Fentanyl is taking its toll on Indigenous communities as it sweeps across the nation like an out-of-control virus.
The heroin that's out has so much fentanyl in it right now that they don't even have time to call for help. They're inject, and within seconds, they're unconscious.
There are no hard numbers to say how many deaths are related, but last year, just in British Columbia alone, close to 1,000 dead from the highly lethal drug.
The fentanyl problem is just insane. People are dying like flies.
Treatment options are limited.
When they hit their bottom, they need that help right away.
In March 2015, the Blood Reserve in Alberta declared a state of emergency. And this past March, the Shuswap Nation Tribal Council followed suit after seeing too many deaths related to fentanyl.
It's important that we take the action now before, how many more people are dying from this.
A little goes a long way. It's easy to get, cheap to make, and can only take the equivalent of a few grains of salt mixed in a pill to kill.
And I'm always going to have to work on my addiction. It's always going to be something, but right now I'm almost 7 months clean.
Joining us now in studio is APTN Investigates a video journalist, Rob Smith. He spent 2 months on Vancouver's downtown east side as he prepared the story for APTN Investigates Killer Pain. Also, our guest in on the Blood Tribe First Nation, she is Dr. Sue Christensen, and she's at the Laverne Health Clinic on the Blood Reserve. Thank you both very much for being here. It's certainly a big crisis that we're talking about here in our discussion. Rob, that the killer pain that you worked on for APTN Investigates, you spent 2 months down there getting a handle on how that opioid fentanyl has affected the people of the downtown east side. Tell us what you saw.
Complete devastation. It's not an exaggeration. As we heard, 1,000 people in British Columbia died in 1 year. We're already expected to double those death tolls in Vancouver. There's already 347 deaths in 2017. One elder I talked to down there likened it to a war zone, and if you spend any time down there, that's what it feels like. You hear the sirens going constantly. You hear emergency vehicles racing by as you're down there just talking to people. So people are shell shocked, and it's something officials on the West Coast are fearful is going to spread across Canada.
And what do you know about the actual fentanyl that is on the Vancouver streets?
It's been reported it comes from China. It's basically taken over for heroin. You can't find, the users I talked to says you can't find heroin on the street. Fentanyl is cheaper to produce. It's a lot less will get you high. So the profit margins for dealers to switch over to fentanyl is just too high. And the problem, talking to a few of the users down there, they think that the reason the death toll has been so high, one of the reasons is the dealers just didn't know how to mix it. And it was basically playing Russian roulette with how much fentanyl you'd get in any single hit, just because they didn't know what they were doing in terms of mixing it.
Let's hear a clip from a Vancouver police officer who was in your story talking about how close you can come to going from being high to being dead.
So what's happened now is we have pills coming in from China that have been produced overseas that are fentanyl based. So the actual active ingredient, the fentanyl or the opioid substance in them is fentanyl. But you're basically gambling. You don't know how much is in there. So the analogy I would give you is like a chocolate chip cookie recipe. If I give you a chocolate chip cookie and I have a chocolate chip cookie, you could get 3 chocolate chips, I could get 10 in mine. If we translate that to fentanyl, someone produces a pill, a counterfeit pill or a pill that has fentanyl in it. Your pill could have a lower amount of fentanyl, but mine could have a significant higher amount of fentanyl where if I'm not used to that or I don't know what's in there, it could kill me.
You just don't know what is in those pills and what the dose is. But it's not just a Vancouver problem, is it?
That's right. Talking further with the sergeant there, the concern of the Vancouver police is the weekend users, the recreational users. What they're finding is the dealers are starting to mix fentanyl in with other drugs like cocaine, like meth. Anything in powder form in an effort, some theorize, in an effort to create more addicts of the fentanyl, so people will come back for the fentanyl as opposed to the cocaine. So that's scary, and that's a pretty heinous activity from the dealers themselves.
And again, the Vancouver police sergeant will explain that in a little more context.
We have other groups who are more of a weekend drug user. They might be out in the party scene. This might be the youth who would go to a party on the weekends or out at night and take a pill every now and then, or smoke something, inhale, ingest something that has fentanyl in it. And this is part of the challenge with fentanyl. None of these groups know what they're getting when it comes to fentanyl. They don't know who the source was that provided that drug. They don't know how much is mixed up in there. They don't know at the end of the day how much they're ingesting in their body. And they are playing Russian roulette with their life.
Of course, the concern is not just with those hardcore addicts, but those recreational users who might drive down to the downtown east side to get a couple pills. We've seen this in the past with other drugs. Of course, like Vancouver, Alberta is experiencing a crisis of its own. 2 years ago, the Blood Reserve was the first reserve in the country to declare a state of emergency over the drug fentanyl. We have joining us now Dr. Sue Christensen, who is working at the Laverne Clinic. Dr. Christensen, bring us back to that 2 years ago when that state of emergency was called. What was it like?
Well, we had, by January of 2015, lost 32 to 33 people from overdoses. That was approximately 2 deaths a month. And the medical community and our community was not prepared for this at all. Part of that is, there's a bit of a bias against opioid replacement therapy, which is the only evidence-based intervention that helps with this crisis, and naloxone wasn't readily available. With the help and encouragement of Health Canada and our community came forward, and we began education campaigns and training people in how to use naloxone to rescue people if they do have an overdose. And then we started prescribing Suboxone, which is an opioid replacement therapy, by April. And in the following 15 months, there was a significant decrease in overdoses. So that was the beginning of where we were at.
Can you describe what is happening in the human body when someone is experiencing a fentanyl overdose?
There are receptors in the brain that the opioid activates if you're given an overdose, the receptors that cause you to stop breathing get overloaded and activated, and you stop breathing. It doesn't cause your heart to stop, but eventually your heart will stop if you don't get oxygen to your vital organs. The opioid addict usually has a need to get high, And after that's achieved, you don't reason properly, and you rest, and you can actually fall asleep and stop breathing, and that's what causes the overdose and the death.
Such a terrible thing to have to go through. Like, how aware is the person when their lungs stop working?
Not at all. They're in bliss, actually. And when people get reversed with a medication like naloxone, a lot of people get very angry because their high is gone. So it's a very, very peaceful, if it does go on to death, it's a very, very peaceful experience. But, and you don't realize that this is happening.
Dr. Christensen, what in your opinion is, why is it hitting Indigenous people so hard?
Well, I think the root of all addiction is pain, be it physical or psychological. And we do have multi-generational trauma that most of our people are contending with, that has its roots in being moved to the reservation and then the residential school crisis. And there's also, the medical community in the 1980s was pushed to use narcotics to treat things like osteoarthritis or ankle sprains. And I don't think many physicians realize that through chronic use of medications like Tylenol 3s or Percocets that people were going to have addiction. So here we have the perfect storm. We have a lot of people with physical injuries who had been using, prescription opioids for many years, and the local colleges have recognized that we as physicians need to do a better job in managing pain, and so doctors start to pull back on the medications that they're prescribed, and then fentanyl comes along, and it's easier to get than even a prescription from a physician. And besides treating physical pain, the opioid also treats psychological pain. So people who, are at risk for falling into fentanyl use are ones who have lost a loved one, or they've been in a car wreck, or they have some profound situational stress, such as no work or getting their gas cut off, socioeconomic stress, no housing, and you just want a break from life. And you have dealers that will actually come to your home and offer you this drug, and you get a relief and a break. And the user doesn't realize that it doesn't take much to hook you, especially if you are vulnerable. And maybe 2 or 3 times you use it, then you need it, and you're stuck, and you can't get off this horrible cycle of using this drug. So I see it as what we have here on the reserve is the perfect storm. We have people who have lots of physical and psychological stress, and sometimes multi-generational use of medications to handle the stresses in their life. And then fentanyl comes along, and it's very, very easy to access.
What would you say about developing every time you take it, you develop this kind of threshold where it'll get you high this time, but maybe the next time you need to take more to get that same feeling. Is that the case with fentanyl too?
Absolutely, and a lot of users started with over-the-counter Tylenol 1s because codeine is an opioid like fentanyl. And every time you take a fentanyl or an opioid of any kind, the receptors in your brain will upregulate, and your body will require more and more. And I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I'm sorry.
Yes, we'll
so
we'll
when
take
you
care
take
of
an
that,
opioid,
okay.
But I want to try to explain this. So when you take opioids from the outside, your body says, I need more receptors to handle all of these opioids. And then when the opioids aren't there, the opioids that are natural and made by your brain, there's not enough of them to give you the comfort that you need to just feel normal. So you have to keep taking more and more additional opioids to just feel normal. And at a certain point, what brings fentanyl addicts forward is they really struggle with getting high, and they start taking it just to feel normal.
Yeah, it's such a pulling addiction from that fentanyl. Rob, I just want to get your perspective. You talk to a lot of people on the downtown east side, some Indigenous people also on the downtown east side. What sense do they give you of why they're using?
The doctor brought it up, pain. They want to dull the pain that's in their lives, some multi-generational issues that they're dealing with. Talked with a mother and a father whose son had died just recently. They were very open with us, and they explained their struggles dealing with residential school. They were residential school survivors, and they passed on, and they were very aware that they passed on problems and issues to their young children. The son was 7 years old at the time when the parents got sober. And so you saw right from the very beginning that passing on of that residential school pain to the child. And the dangers with fentanyl is it is so lethal and so quick. Julian is the name of the person who passed away, was trying to get off. He was trying to reach out to treatment, but it was so toxic that, you know, this one time he took it alone and he overdosed. And the family says treatment on demand is what's needed. There's just not enough treatment options out there, and too much red tape to get into treatment. Addicts need multiple times, multiple visits to treatment to get off completely. So when a person needs to go to treatment, they need a place to go. That's what the father was saying to me.
All right, we'll delve into more of what's needed for the fentanyl crisis. When we come back, we'll hear from a recovering fentanyl user who dreamed of becoming a model. And to take us to break, here's what some of the addicts from Vancouver's downtown east side have to say about their new drug of choice.
I've overdosed on fentanyl twice.
Yeah, it's a little scary, but I'm not a chicken shit. I don't live my life looking over my shoulder or worrying about the next overdose.
I have to. I'm addicted to fentanyl. My tolerance is way up there. So, like, it only takes fentanyl or carfentanil, like, to feel my stuff. Like, you feel the rush.
Heroin has way better legs. Fentanyl only gets you high for a short period of time, then you need another fix. Whereas the heroin, when we had it, and other pharmaceutical drugs like morphine and Dilaudid, they keep you high for a longer period of time. Fentanyl is really quick. It's like you're high, and then 2 hours later you got to buy more. You got to go out and do something to get more drugs. So.
Join our conversation now. Send your thoughts in an email to infocus@aptn.ca. Like our APTN InFocus Facebook page, follow and tweet us at APTN InFocus, or call in toll free at 1-877-647-2786. Thanks for staying with us as we put the fentanyl crisis in focus. Let's go to social media now to hear what some of you are saying about today's topic. On social media, we asked, what's your opinion on the fentanyl crisis? Marie tells us the sellers must be charged with murder. This is from Beverly. Sad that people will choose this life rather than find a solution to their past history. And we have this comment from Daniel. I live in an apartment building that is a harm reduction building, and ODs are now a weekly occurrence. Tori tells us, with Canada legalizing pot now, they'll probably find ways to lace that into pot. Maybe that's a discussion that we can have with our guests about fentanyl being in other drugs. I'm not so sure that Canada would put fentanyl into their legal pot, but that's a discussion for another day, and a good point. Thank you for sending that, Tori. We have this from Bobby. Families, don't hide your head in the sand. This is a real epidemic. We must become aware. We must get educated. Those are just some of the comments that came in for InFocus on fentanyl. And of course, we always want you to be a part of our show. Join our conversation now. Send your thoughts in an email to infocus@aptn.ca. Like our APTN InFocus Facebook page, follow and tweet us at APTN InFocus, or call in toll free at 1-877-647-2786. Joining us now in studio is Chelsea LaLiberte. She is the person who is overcoming this massive problem that so many people are having to deal with. Chelsea, can you tell us how you became addicted to fentanyl?
In November of 2014, someone who I was surrounding myself with, someone close to me, was involved in it. Was involved in getting it from the streets, and that's how I came about. It became just curiosity because I never seen it before, never heard of it, and I tried it one day, unknowingly that I was going to be addicted soon after.
What was it like the first time you took it?
It was an integrative euphoria, like I said before. It was I got itchy, kind of felt a little nauseated, and oftentimes I would throw up. So.
And how did you feel that need to keep taking more? When did you realize that?
It was soon after. Like the doctor said, your tolerance gets higher, and then you use it for a few times, and then you need it. It was a few weeks. I got sick, and I thought it was a flu. I had no idea that it was because I was withdrawing. I had never withdrawn before, so I just assumed that it was a cold or the flu or something until I went to the doctor. And then until I had used again, and I realized how quick it had taken me from feeling crummy to amazing.
Wow. And how did that addiction reshape the way you were living your life?
Well, I lost in contact with my family. I wasn't bringing myself around them because I was hiding my addiction from them. I quit my job. I became in an abusive relationship, and all my close loved ones and my friends were no longer a priority to me.
Mm-hmm. And what made you come to the realization that you had to do something?
Well, on April 17th, I gave birth to my son. And so he's been pretty much the reason for me wanting to get clean. I relapsed after I had my son because I didn't realize I was given fentanyl for my epidural. And soon after I had him, I relapsed. But I got clean because I couldn't live that life. Being an addict and trying to be a mother at the same time was too hard. And I was constantly, it got to the point where I was having withdrawals every 4 hours. So I was having to use so much more and spending so much money. And it was just, my son didn't deserve to be in that life. He deserved the mother that I knew that I was capable of being, not me, the addict.
Yes, definitely. Your experience in childbirth and getting that epidural, of course there is pain medication in that. Maybe I wanted to get Dr. Sue Christensen's perspective on that. When there should be maybe more safeguards for people who are experiencing an addiction when they're trying to access medical services. Dr. Christensen?
Yeah, I think it's imperative if anybody does have a history of opioid addiction that they let any physician who takes care of them know that they are susceptible to getting addicted to opioids again, and it doesn't take a whole lot. So that is very, very useful information for any doctor trying to take care of the individual, and we could try to find alternatives that might do better for the person.
And Chelsea, what do you think about how this addiction is gripping people right across the country?
It breaks my heart because I have lost people that I know to it, and I just feel that now that I'm in a place where I am healing and I am able to use my voice, that I need to raise awareness, and I need to hopefully save so many more kids, teenagers, you know what I mean, adults that need the help. And the biggest thing is the medical centers. It's either the wait lists or else that something silly like they won't take you if you live out of a province, which where you live you should not be able to not get the treatment that you help just because of where you live.
And where are you in your recovery now? Do you have something that's helping you with that fentanyl addiction?
I am almost 8 months fentanyl clean, but I've been on the methadone program since November of 2016. So that's going well. I mean, it's definitely given me everything that I need to be the best mother that I can be. And I'm already going down on my methadone, so hopefully by the fall I'll be completed my methadone.
Yes, awesome. Wow,
Yeah.
You're really staying strong there for sure. That's great to hear. I want to go to a couple of callers that we have on the line. We have Louise calling from Winnipeg. Louise, what's your connection to the fentanyl crisis?
Well, I used to work in the downtown east side, and as you can tell, I'm crying. I've never been on drugs, but I saw so many heartbreaking events, and I can tell everybody, don't start, because there's no way out of it. I'm serious.
I hear you on that. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on that.
And you know what? Once you start and you can't get out of it, you just die on the streets. Okay?
All right.
Tell the people not to start.
Good advice. Thank you very much, Louise. I know, Rob, you experienced that firsthand. Like, that's some really rough life that people are living. They don't want to be there.
And the amount of loss that people are experiencing on a daily basis, friends and workmates. One support worker down there lost 15 members of the support group he was working in. So it's like I said earlier, it's devastating to the people who are being left behind, and there's got to be some thought and care given to those that are down there. Even residents are learning how to use naloxone, which is a reversal agent, but even that is a traumatic event to watch somebody OD, and then you bring them back to life. Watch them go blue and watch them basically die, and then you bring them back, and that's saving a life, but there's still residual trauma left over from something like that. So the people that are there, the person that we just heard, need help too.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to go to Rochelle. Rochelle is calling us from Vancouver Island. Rochelle, what are your thoughts about the fentanyl crisis?
Oh, I had a health worker come last night, and she said she's lost 27 friends in 2 years from suicide and fentanyl, and 3 of them were actually ex-boyfriends. And but I've been doing a lot of research on nutrition and so forth, and I've been following Dr. John Gray for many years, men from Mars, women from Venus, and I posted a link on the Facebook page. He actually has some really good information about minerals for the brain. Instead of drugs, he talks about how there have been Harvard studies that indicate that these drugs, antidepressants and so forth, do not get harmful. He has, I think, 60 pages of research that is really hard to find, but it is available. And that alternative things like lithium orotate, liposomal vitamin C, undigested, these types of things that can start, because we're all walking around, we all have this garbage and toxins in our bodies, and you know, if we can get on these kinds of things, it's going to really help us tremendously.
All right, thank you very much, Rochelle. I didn't catch a little bit because their signal is just breaking up a tiny bit. Dr. Christensen, did you catch that? Where you know, maybe there are some homeological things, homeopathological, that's the word I think I'm looking for, that we can do that will also help people trying to break free from fentanyl.
Well, there's, in my opinion, and from what my looking at the medical literature, there's two ways to get off opioids. One is cold turkey or abstinence, and of people who try to do that, 98% will fail. So out of 100 people, maybe 1 or 2 will successfully achieve abstinence and get their life back, and it'll take 6 months. Beneath that umbrella, people can try different sorts of homeopathic remedies, and yes, if you can do that, that's wonderful, but it's very risky because people who try to just quit cold turkey have a high risk of relapse, and when they do relapse, their death rate is significantly higher. So most addictions experts advise people to go the other route, which is using opioid replacement therapy, such as what Chelsea is on, methadone or Suboxone. Of people that actually do use opioid replacement therapy to get off street fentanyl or other opioids, 20 to 30% of them will successfully get off the opioid. And then the other 40 to 60% may need this medication lifelong. And that shouldn't be considered a failure. That's a success. This is not a substitute drug. This gets people in a safe place. If taken correctly, you can see by talking to Chelsea, you're normal. You're not high, and you're safe. And it saves lives.
Yes, see, Chelsea.
And finally, I'd like to add that
Oh, okay, go ahead.
And just the other thing I wanted to add based on that other caller is I regard every individual as unique, and the type of therapies that we offer people is specific to them. And I think it's very, very hard to just blanketly say that, you know, one way is going to work for one person and so it should work for others. Every individual is unique and different.
Yes, absolutely. Chelsea, you mentioned that you had a newborn baby when you were trying to go into treatment or you know, trying to get off fentanyl. How did that work out for you and your baby?
Sorry. When I had checked into detox, it was going to be the first time that I'd ever spent a night away from my son. So it broke my heart. But I knew that I was doing it so that I could be a better mom for him, the mother that he deserves. You know, he didn't choose me, the addict, as a mother. He chose the woman that he knows that I'm capable of being. So I had to do that for him, and being in detox was the most scariest experience I'd ever been, because you're around people that you don't know, and it's a different environment, and most of all, you're not getting high, and you have to learn with these coping mechanisms. But at the same time, for the people who are addicted to fentanyl, I want to encourage the fact that when you check into a detox facility, that you're medicated. They don't expect you just to, you know, go cold turkey or anything like that. Like, they make you feel comfortable and everything. And if it wasn't for the detox center that I went into in Saskatoon, I don't think I would have been successful in my recovery.
And if, but you're saying miss your son, maybe if you had access or there was a different structure to that detox, maybe?
Yeah, well, so I wasn't able to see my son for the 6 days, and finding family treatment centers in Canada are hard. there is a treatment center in Saskatchewan where you can take your kids with you to the treatment, and they provide childcare for them. But I haven't found another one like that around here.
All right. Yes.
So I think it's important
across country.
I think it's important as a parent if that's able to be like an option, like a family treatment center for you to take your kids to be there with you, because I mean, you will need to heal yourself and your children.
All right, some prescriptive medicine for the system. We're going to have to go to a break now, but you know, as nations struggle, of course, to meet this demand to battle the fentanyl crisis, some politicians and advocacy groups are calling for radical changes to policies and laws. From Rob Smith's investigative piece, Killer Pain. Here's what one social service provider who runs a harm reduction site on Vancouver's downtown east side had to say.
We need to start thinking about what's next. Okay, so we've trained so many people in Narcan and first aid and overdose. That shouldn't be the norm. Like, we have to do something more, like stopping the deaths. Not, you know, like, it feels like we're plateaued and this is what we're telling people to do. So we're becoming accustomed to people overdosing, and we shouldn't. I think that it's the laws that need to be changed, because quite honestly, if the laws weren't the way they are, we wouldn't have those deaths. To me, a life is a life, whether they're in a gutter down here or in a mansion in West Van. A life is still a life. And I don't believe that the drug policies we have are in the best interest of the community.
Thanks for staying with us as we put the fentanyl crisis in focus. We have a caller on the line, Danny. Danny, what is your connection to the fentanyl crisis? I understand you've been clean for some time.
Yes, I have been, 7 years.
Wow, congratulations. How did you do it?
Well, you know, being down the east side myself, I was a binge user, and what came to my outlook on, you know, my drug habit was that I didn't belong anywhere. I was looking for somewhere where I fit in, who would accept me as, you know, who I am. And what I found out through the treatment of years of, you know, working on myself is that it was, you know, my culture, regardless of where I was, even if it wasn't from my nation, that they fulfilled, or they gave me that peace that I was searching for in the drug world, or that addiction world.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on that. Again and again, you know, we hear these problems, and how people are getting back is a connection to the culture. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on that, Danny. We're going to go to Steve. Steve is on the line from Saugeen. Steve, what would you like to share about what you know of the fentanyl crisis?
Oh, it's awful. It's a heartbreaking, heart-wrenching crisis that grabs not only the user but all the family around. When there's ever in the news when they find somebody dead, you know, you can't help but think, well, is that my girl? You know, like it's horrible.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I know. I can definitely relate as a parent. You know, always wondering, is she okay? How do you get through that?
Well, you can't. It's hard. Like it's hard. Like there's like every single night you're thinking about it, because, well, for us, our family, we lost a son to suicide. You know, he was addicted. You know, and he couldn't get off it, and he used to say, I can't do it, and you know, and so for us, like we know that intervention doesn't work. Treatment center can give you a breather, you know, treatment centers, but the thing too with treatment centers is that there's so much red tape to get into it. It's a stumbling block for most people. Like, you know, you go to the doctor, get a referral. You know, there's a whole bunch of different things you have to. And so, for someone that's in need and crisis, there's really no place. Like the detoxes are, you know, they're limited, and it's hard to get in. You know, what they need sometimes is just a breather, just a place to catch your breath, because they're going all the time nonstop. You know, and it affects them so many different ways. Like, you know, like they can't go to the bathroom for days at a time. They don't sleep for days at a time. And then when they're not on the fentanyl, you know, they're taking Xanax just so they can function. And then they tell you, my mind doesn't work the same way anymore. And then, so how do you relate to that? You know, you can beg them, you can cry to them, you can try to guilt them, you can try and bully them into quitting, or you can have the best advice, but it doesn't work. So all I know is that, you know, you can't enable them, you can't keep giving them money, because all it goes to the dealers. So what do you do? Well, you can give them your time, like you know, you try to give her kindness and tell her that we love her and the door's open. Come home, come home, come home. But you know, she doesn't want to.
Yes,
because
then
she doesn't want to see you.
That happens sometimes. Yes, Steve. I'd like to thank you very much for sharing your perspective with us on that. When you talk about, you know, like there are services for people and whether or not they access it, but there are some people, you know, who are just not going to do it, whether, you know, maybe they're not interested in quitting. Maybe they don't feel like they could even quit, so they don't even bother. But we're seeing another idea come up. You've uncovered some of this in your research, Rob, for heroin users.
That's right. There's a treatment plan in British Columbia. There's one clinic called the Crosstown Clinic that offers prescription heroin or Suboxone. That you come off the street and you're dispensed. You're actually given clean heroin as opposed to dirty fentanyl. The idea being to keep the person alive long enough for them to make the decision themselves to get clean. So that's very controversial. We've witnessed in the past decade a fight with Insight to keep their doors open, and that was just a place that offered a safe place for people to come and bring their drugs and use it under supervision. This is actually dispensing heroin.
Giving people a little hit of heroin.
That's right. And what they're seeing, it was a 4-year study that has been evolved into actual treatment now. What they're seeing is people being able to maintain a job. They reconnected with families and talked with one person who was now thinking about going back to school, but was not ready yet to get off the drug itself. So it's a very complicated issue.
Chelsea, how desperate do you become when you need that drug and you can't get your hands on it?
Oh my God. It's horrible. I mean, nobody wants to be dope sick. Nobody wants to feel like that. It's an agonizing pain. You can't do anything. You don't have the strength to get up. You know what I mean? Simple tasks are very hard to handle, and the lengths that I've gone to get it, it's sad what I've had to do, you know what I mean? And the amount, like the street value, sometimes it goes up, it fluctuates, but it's still around like $40 to $50 for one.
Wow, for one pill. We do have a clip to run around that controversial idea, like Rob says, about prescription heroin. Let's listen.
You know, gotta get rid of the stigma that it's just, you know, you're a junkie or whatever, because you're not. Because I don't do crime no more. I don't do anything wrong, you know, to feed my habit. And it's this here program that has saved my life.
Saved his life. Dr. Christensen, what's your perspective on Canada implementing policies like prescription heroin?
Well, I just like to look at the medical evidence, and I know that supervised injection centers in Europe work and they actually save lives, and I believe that the evidence is there that prescription heroin saves lives too. Understanding that people are injecting in a place where if they accidentally overdose, they're going to be revived, and so it's a way of saving lives. And I think in Gabor Mate's book, The Realm of the Hungry Ghosts, he even pointed out that William Osler, who is the father of medicine, he was an opioid addict and had to have a little bit of opium every day in order to function. And so you can be a highly functional individual that makes profound contributions to society and have an opioid addiction. It's a disease of the brain, and we have medication to help. And sometimes it's a little bit of opioid like heroin, or an opioid replacement like methadone or Suboxone, but you can have a good and productive life with it. And I think if our goal is to keep people safe, we have to bring the issue of prescription heroin and medically supervised injection sites and medication dispensing to the table, because it does save lives when we look at the data in Europe where it's been used for many years.
Yes, would you describe it as like a new normal, that we're having to like bring more opioids into the community to deal with opioid addiction?
Well, it's it's a double-sided question. Suboxone is a partial opioid, so it's not a pure one. But what you want to do is bring them to the community in a way that they can be dispensed in a safe way. People know exactly what they're getting, and they're safe.
Yes, definitely along
and
the
not
harm reduction
necessarily
model.
taking it to get high.
Yes, absolutely. It's so they can live. And we do have some advice from a very notable doctor speaking about the people who are addicted to fentanyl and how we should be treating them and thinking about them. Here's Dr. Evan Adams.
And that we need to support them so that they can live another day. And so that's where harm reduction comes in. If you're going to use, don't use alone. We have naloxone. If you overdose, we can help you. If you ever want to go into treatment, because at some point everyone wants to quit, we'll help you. And your family is understanding. Your family isn't going to turn their back on you. They're going to face you and say, you deserve our help and we love you.
Absolutely. Chelsea, how has your family been supporting you throughout your time?
My family's thrilled. I know for a long time that they thought that they had completely lost me to the drug, but since my relationship with my mom is good, we're working on it. I have everyone back in my life who I kept out, which is great.
What would you say to other people who may be watching who are have been in the same situation as you?
Just don't be afraid to heal yourself. I mean, we all go through our things in the past, you know, and we all have our reasons for why, but just take the time to heal yourself. You know, there was a point in my addiction where I had just accepted the fact that this was going to be my life, and I was either going to, you know, die from it or, basically allow it to kill me. But then I had to take control of my life because I have a son. You know, and that takes courage. It takes courage for anyone to accept that they have a problem, for them to get the help, and for them to maintain their recovery. It hasn't been easy for me, and I'm thankful for the support systems that I've set in place for myself to be successful in my recovery.
Yes, awesome. You're just a shining example of what a young Indigenous woman can do. Dr. Christensen, we're quickly running out of time. If you could give something prescriptive that First Nations can do to help deal with this crisis.
I think they should encourage all of their physicians who are working in their area to get their Suboxone license, and let them know that it's a very rewarding experience to help people get their lives back, and it saves lives. And everybody should be trained in how to use naloxone, and clinics should make this readily available for all community.
Dr.
And then
Susan
on top of
Christensen,
that,
I'll have to
easy
cut you
access
off
to
there. I'd like to
treatment.
thank you very much for sharing your perspective with us. I had to interrupt you there because we're quickly running out of time. Thanks again, Dr. Sue Christensen, coming to us from the Kainai Blood Tribe community. Thank you very much to Chelsea La Liberty for sharing your experience with us, and APTN Investigates video journalist Rob Smith. Thank you so much. And thank you to the viewer for watching and for calling in and be part of our show. Next week, next Wednesday, Keith Secola, remember that song, Indian Car? It's been 25 years, and that's what he's celebrating. We'll talk about that next week on InFocus. Thanks so much for joining us, and take care.